Well, here we are at the closing of the PaTTAN Literacy Symposium. And I'd like to offer some thanks. First of all, to our Bureau Special Education Director, Carol Clancy, thank you. And to our PaTTAN Executive Directors, PaTTAN Pittsburgh, Paula Schmidt, PaTTAN Malvern, Becky Fogel, and PaTTAN Harrisburg, Dr. Angela Kirby. Thank you for your support of this Literacy Symposium. Also, a big thank you to the PaTTAN Literacy team, who's been such an integral part of this Literacy Symposium. Also to our support staff, and in particular, my program assistant, Kelly Kapp. Without her and the support team, this would not have happened. A big thank you as well, as you would expect, to our tech team, to everyone at PaTTAN who has made such a difference and made this Literacy Symposium possible. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And to all of you who have attended the PaTTAN Literacy Symposium from across the country and across the world, my sincere thanks for joining us in this literacy learning. Now, who better to close us than Dr. Anita Archer? 2 years ago, she closed our PaTTAN Literacy Symposium. And Dr. Archer, as you likely know, is a master teacher, and she's even a more masterful human being. We are absolutely thrilled and honored to have Dr. Anita Archer once again closing the PaTTAN Literacy Symposium. Let me tell you a bit more about Dr. Archer. Dr. Anita Archer serves as an educational consultant to state departments, county agencies, and school districts on explicit instruction and literacy instruction. She has taught elementary and middle school students and is the recipient of 10 Outstanding Educator Awards. Dr. Archer has served on the faculties of San Diego State University, the University of Washington, and the University of Oregon. She is internationally known for her presentations and publications on instructional procedures and literacy instruction, and has co-authored numerous curriculum materials with Dr. Mary Gleason, including Rewards, Reading and Writing Intervention Programs, Voyager Sopris. Dr. Archer has authored with Dr. Charles Hughes, Explicit Instruction, Effective and Efficient Teaching. Please join me in welcoming PaTTAN's longtime friend and my dear friend, Dr. Anita Archer, as our closing keynote speaker. Thank you. Take it away, Dr. Archer.
Thank you, Pamela. You know, I am thrilled to be at this conference. Thrilled to be here because I got to, in preparation for the EndNote, I got to watch as many sessions as I could. And isn't it wonderful that they're going to be online for us to repeat and listen to again? I mean, if I need to listen again to Jack Fletcher to get that down. I need to listen again to Louisa Moats. And I definitely want to use Emily Hanford's keynote today with my whole staff. It is, all of those were excellent. But then I also got to read all of the handouts. So this is truly an EndNote, sort of a summary of this conference. And the title is Success Breeds Success. And you're going to see as we go through this, what's the importance of that statement. Well, when we look at this, I'm Anita Archer. I live in Portland, Oregon. It is a overcast day in Portland, but it has temperatures that you might even like 75. And if you want to watch me teach children on WW Explicit Instruction, we have little vignettes. Let us just look and reflect on the context in which you joined this conference. And I believe it is for PaTTAN, the first remote literacy symposium. It may, we never know what's going to happen next year. It may be one that again is remote or in person. But you know, oftentimes there is a silver lining. And I think the silver lining, as I talked to Pamela, was the significant increase in numbers that were able to be served by this literacy symposium. And here we are in the middle of a pandemic in my state, your state, all across the United States. And you know, we will survive this. Eventually, we won't be wearing masks, maybe. but maybe we could give someone a hug. If I was at PaTTAN, I would certainly be doing that with my friends. And we are in the middle of a civil rights movement for which we will arise. But it even deepens our commitment to all of our children that we serve. And we are in the midst of uncertainty, even what's going to happen when August and September comes and our new school year is to begin. You know, I'm wondering, are we going to have students in a classroom? Are we going to be teaching remote online lessons live? Are we going to be recording those lessons? But one thing that we will do, no matter what is the platform on which we are serving children, is that we will do everything we can to use the information from this conference to ensure that students have higher levels of reading within our own school site. So that is the context. But reflect back with me on this conference. And yet it was a conference of excellence. The PaTTAN worked very hard to get the very best speakers for all of us to learn from. And they were dedicated, informed, passionate presenters. And all of us, after 3 months, have kind of gotten used to doing online, recorded, or live presentations. And I'm finding that I'm quite attentive when they're on. But yesterday and the day before, I did 3 presentations, and 3 presentations, you might have been at one, but then we had questions, and questions live and questions in writing. And I have to tell you, it showed me that our participants are equally dedicated, informed, and passionate about teaching reading. And so it was a total delight in terms of the speakers and the participants. It was also a symposium where every single presentation was an evidence informed. So the content we have very high regard for and confidence in making a difference for our students. And throughout all of the different sessions, very effective teaching procedures were utilized, and ones that also were research validated. And I just had this energy, even though it was remote energy, that there was a promise embedded in everything we do for higher outcomes for all students. So what a gift to each of us. And the fact that the recordings, the handouts, and additional materials eventually will be all available to you so that you can even learn more. Terrific. Well, what was my reflections on this conference? Well, basically, there was one thread that may not have been announced, but was present. And that was the focus on 2 major things, learning and teaching. One of my favorite quotes from Fullen was this. So put your finger, because I'm going to do this as if you were my students, just to show you how you can involve your students if you ended up doing a remote lesson. So put your finger under the word no, and we are going to read this together and begin. No system or district in the world has made significant gains for students without a relentless focus on learning and teaching process. And this whole conference focused on the learning and teaching process. Now, as I read through all of the handouts, one thing I noticed is that the whole range of speakers came with an outcome in mind for the children that we serve. That wasn't that they would complete certain activities. It wasn't certain that they would use a certain program, read a certain book, but rather that every day in every class that they would have learning and more 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 learning. This is where we have to, as educators, from principals to superintendents, to teachers, to coaches, to staff developers, to paraeducators, this is where we have to maintain our focus. That students are constantly learning, and we're constantly assessing that learning and altering the program that we're presenting to them. And to go along with success breeds success, when you learn something and you experience success and more 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 success, this is what breeds more success, but also motivation. And that is the purpose of us being very certain that students have success. So they will be more motivated to give reading effort, to read, to look at the words, to utilize all the skills that they've used because they've experienced success. So let's talk for a minute about moral imperative. I don't know, as I look around our world today, I think we all need to stand up and look at our moral imperative in all places of work, in all places of service through our government, in all places through our religious groups. What is our moral imperative? And again, Fullen is probably the person who's written most about this. And so 2 quotes. I'm going to read. When I stop, you say the next word. The moral imperative in education consists of a deep commitment to raising the bar and closing the gap of learning for all students, with the emphasis on learning and for all students. In another one of his many books on moral imperative that I read over this pandemic period, you know, one of the things is that every day I must be getting books that I've ordered. And now my whole house it was filled with books, and now it is like overflowing with books. But he made a parallel and talk about this. In education, moral imperative, simply means that principals and teachers are committed to improving the lives and learning of the children whom they are responsible. And so I used these 2 slides last week, and then a principal sent me this. Hey, we put those 2 together, and this is the moral commitment of our staff. We are committed to raising the bar and closing the gap of learning for all children, improving the current and future lives of the children we serve. Well, here is what I did as I looked at the handouts from the Literacy Symposium and also listened to the keynote addresses, because all over this conference was moral imperative, which I wish that every teacher would sit down before school starts and write down what is their moral imperative. I would like every school to sit down and write or rewrite their moral imperative. I'd like every superintendent to get his staff together and write a moral imperative. And so here's some that I plucked out of the handouts. Every child has the right to reading. That was done in one of the handouts from PaTTAN. All students will learn to read accurately and fluently with good comprehension. And so that could be where we want all of our actions to get us to. Another one was all students will learn at their highest level. And in one of the handouts, they quoted Phyllis Hunter, who is famous for her statement, reading is a civil right. Now, I don't think we'll have any trouble agreeing to any of these. But there's some reason why at this time, in sort of a perilous time, we need to strengthen our moral imperative that truly has some benefits. And as I reflected in the last weeks on moral imperative and read more books about this, it seems to me that, first of all, it gives us a reason for what we do. Someone says to you, well, why do you spend so much time preparing and teaching these students in the area of reading? And you say, well, reading is an absolute civil right. You must write. You must be able to read and write well in order to be able to be a part of our society, to be a part of our democracy, to be a part of our economy, to be a part of civilization. It is a civil right. So it gives us a reason for what we do. And as a result, it shows the importance of our role and allows us to take pride in what we do. And as professionals, it guides us. So maybe if I have a moral imperative that the students that I'm working with will read at the highest level, and I have some students who are not reading at their highest level, and it's my mission to be sure they can, then I need to look at the content I'm teaching, the procedures I'm doing, the intensity of what we're doing, the amount of time we're giving to those students so that they can get to that highest level. It really guides us in that pursuit. And one of the things that we have found in education is that collaboration with other teachers in our grade level, other teachers on the leadership committee, other teachers in our same domain if we are secondary. But now we have a joint reason for what we do, a joint way to see if we're on the right path. And that leads, if you are a follower of John Hattie and his work on effect sizes, the highest effect sizes I've seen him report was collective teacher efficacy. The strong belief that not just me, but everybody teaching in our school site has the same belief that what they do as a teacher makes a significant difference in the outcome for students. And I can tell from the questions that I got in the last 2 days, and some of you even sent personal questions to me, it showed that you have the strong belief that if students are not getting what you want in reading, that you can make a difference, that you can change that. And when we get everybody on board with that, it's a very powerful school. So, because I've been into thinking about moral imperative, I've had many conversations. And I'll have to tell you that one of the most interesting was with the Postal Service worker who delivers my mail. Because I live in Portland, Oregon, where it rains, and we have beautiful vegetation as a result. But the only place I have a covered venue for working outside, which I prefer working outside, is my front porch. So I had to put a table on my front porch. Well, that means that packages are delivered, FedEx books, Amazon books, the Postal Service books. So I was there one day, a few weeks ago, and the postal person came up and said, well, what are you doing today, Archer? And I said, well, I'm writing and reading about moral imperative. I said, tell me, what is your moral imperative for your work? And she said, well, you know it. Through sleet and snow and hot weather and even the darkness of the night, if we've not delivered, we will bring you your mail. And I said, really? Okay. And I actually did later check it out, because neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers away from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. It's actually written down, but it is not the formal mandate of the Postal Service. But she said, and it was so good, she said, but when I asked her, what is your personal moral imperative? And she said, well, Let's see, my moral imperative is to deliver to you and other people in this neighborhood cards like birthday cards and other personal communications, to deliver business to you, information to you, bills to you, magazines, which you get a lot of those, and other things you might want to read. But I'm also bringing you today, that happened to be that day, here is your primary ballot, because Oregon is one of the 3 states that everyone votes by mail. Wouldn't we love that in our next election for even Pennsylvania? So later I did look up to see if the post office had a formal moral imperative, and they did. To bind the nation together through the personal, educational, literacy, and business correspondence of the people. All right, I'm very impressed with the Postal Service having a moral imperative binding us together. So, but just one more voice on this issue. So one day, and it was probably many years ago, I was teaching in Ellensburg, Washington, which happened to be the town I was born in, the town where both of my parents were raised. And my mother was raised by her Italian immigrant father and spoke fluent Italian as a result. And her father and her uncle, who raised her, also spoke Italian. And so my mother had never heard me speak. And she was at that time in her mid-80s. And so she and my father came to listen. And so it was an all-day presentation. She sat quietly at the back until the end, and she raised her hand. Now, what do you do when your short Italian mother raises her hand? You really have one option. You call on her. So I called on her. And she stood up. We could hardly see her because she was like a tiny little short, beautiful Italian woman. And she said this, and luckily we were taping it that day, so I will have it forever. She said, after I listened all day, I want you to know, may the accident of a child's birth not be the predictor of the child's future. Think about that. Is that not a moral imperative? May the accident of a child's birth not be the predictor of a child's future. And she was thinking, here's the accident of her birth. She was born to a parent, was raised by a parent that was an immigrant in deep poverty. She had every year she had one new dress that she washed out every night. But the teachers at her school, which she praised her whole life, wanted her to be, as they always said, we want you to know as much and be as accomplished as her best friend, who happened to be the child of the local doctor. And so we dedicate this to Louise, Anita, Naki, D.C. Strange. Twice she was married. Naki was her Italian name. Well, let's keep in our hearts our moral imperative. And a few stories here as we get into this. A moral imperative has to be coupled with what is the content we need to teach and how we need to teach it. And if you'll reflect back on all of the different sessions you heard, I was going to say that you went to, but you heard, that they had either both of these, critical content, what to teach to make a difference, or effective instruction, how to teach. Now, I want to use just 2 stories just to show you what can happen, where you have the moral imperative, but you don't have the critical content. You have the moral imperative, but you don't have the effective instruction. So the first story, this one was a story that happened just a few years ago, 2 years ago, with a great niece. And my great niece was in her first year of teaching first grade. And she was teaching at a school where the principal knew me. And so midway through the year, I get a call, and he said, now, when you're in the state of Washington and you're nearby, you really must come and see your great niece teach. She has some of the best teacher-student relationship, organization of her classroom, schedule of her classes. I just want you to come and celebrate your great niece. And so when I was in the area, I went to see my great niece. And as I entered the room, there was on the wall a poster that I had never seen. There is the poster. And it tells children in first grade when they are stuck on a word they should try, well, look at the pictures. Get your mouth ready for the first sound. There was Skippy Frog, skip it, and skip it. And I said to myself, oh no, oh no, 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 no. If they can't pronounce a word, don't tell them to be eagle eye and look at the pictures. So I stayed, and sure enough, she was a terrific teacher, except content that's not going to be useful. And so I took the poster down and we sat down, and I said, you know what I do. I'm a professor in reading and language arts and write curriculum materials in reading. And we don't want children guessing on the pictures what the pronunciation of a word is. Now, in terms of meaning, that as a type of a context clue would be helpful for meaning if it was unknown, but not for pronunciation. You need to have them look at the words as the only big hint in terms of seeing the letters, the letter combinations and graphemes that relate to phonemes that lead them to the pronunciation of the word. And she said, well, we have whole lessons on look at the picture in our core program. And I said, I was just taken back. And so I decided to do a little tiny research project. And I just love doing data. And so I decided to do what I called a Google Curiosity. And so I put in Google decoding strategies kindergarten, and I decided to look at the first 50 images that came up. Well, the 49 of the first images gave suggestions such as guess based on the picture and guess based on the first sound or skip it. See, what we know from research is that, and particularly the long history of excellent research done by Lene Ehri, E-H-R-I, that we need to have them look at the word. So that reminds us, my niece was totally committed to her students learning to read, totally committed to being the best teacher possible, totally committed to teaching the program she was given, totally committed to it. She had moral imperative, but not the right content. Another story. And so one of the great gifts of my life is working with a number of districts, and over time, hundreds of districts. And one of the districts that I'm working with is in Lincoln, Nebraska. And I love Lincoln, Nebraska. I love going there. I love everything about the community and the teachers, and wonderful. And I'm working with some of the lowest performing schools in their district, and the whole district, but also some low performing schools. And so one of the schools I'm working at had students in it that were predominantly on free and reduced lunch, many of them English language learners, and children of poverty. And they had, just to put this into context, they had adopted many years beforehand a core program. And the core program had a phonics strand through it. And when we looked at it and analyzed it as far as is it systematic? it did systematically introduce letter sound associations and had a few words for practice, and also had information in terms of phonemic awareness. So it had a sequence, but the students were not thriving. So we said, we have got to intensify this. We have to look at the instructional aspect of it. And so we took out what we knew about good instruction and we analyzed it, and it told us we needed to do more. And so one of the sessions you might have gone to was on ECRI, Enhanced Core Reading Instruction, which you could go online and find information about it, or you could get the book called Enhanced Core Reading Instruction. But I made a list of what we knew about good instruction in terms of the design of it and the delivery of it, and we checked it out with the core program, and then we checked it out in terms of ECRI, which is basically added to a core program, keeping the same sequence of instructions so that the decodable text could be used, but enhancing significantly the quality of instruction. So this is what we found in terms of that it had very explicit instruction and used routines for introducing consonant, vowel, consonant words, consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant words, consonant, vowel, consonant, E words, irregular words, words that had S on the ending or ED in the ending. They had routines. And they used modeling of new information, followed by guided practice, followed by checking for understanding. And they had very deliberate practice. This is the goal of this format that we're going to use. This is the goal of this format. This is the goal of this format. And they had spaced practice. So there was built-in review of letter sounds, of syllable types that they have learned to read, of the quality of words that they had done. And so, okay, everything on my list they had. And they also had what we know about the delivery of instruction, many opportunities to respond, monitoring of those responses, immediate feedback, including well-designed corrections, and a brisk pace. So here was a case where the content prescribed was adequate, but the instruction needed to be intensified. And ECRI provided lessons that were intense, that met these criteria for whole group instruction, but for children that were at risk, it was used for Tier 2 also. And it was also utilized for pre-teaching. They actually found, now this is connected with the University of Oregon, and I am an Oregonian, but I like it because of the outcomes, not just that it is Oregon. And so it would equally work out well in Pennsylvania. But they found that pre-teaching the lowest performing students actually had more outcome strength as a double dose than having subsequent reteaching. So we introduced it at one of the schools I was working with in kindergarten by the teachers. Now, I will tell you, some of them were a little reluctant to teach this very precise program with lots of opportunities to respond and with certain kind of feedback and certain reward results you had to do. But in the end, success not only is beneficial to children, it's really beneficial to us. If our moral imperative is to ensure kids can read, and they now read better, this is highly reinforcing to every teacher. And that is what happened. This was a note sent to me. I have taught kindergarten for 26 years. This year, my kids, K kids can read. When we gave the winter formative assessment, all of my students were at benchmark, with one exception, a newcomer. I am so disappointed that we can't give the spring assessment due to the pandemic. It would be even better. I have never had a better year teaching. Isn't that what we want? But the point here is that moral imperative has to be matched with the right content, which is the whole purpose of the PaTTAN Symposium, and teaching powerful enough to make a difference. So we are going to look at those two areas in more depth, starting with critical content. Now, if there is one thing that has emerged from the big projects that I was able to review that PaTTAN's involved in, it is ensuring that under the science of reading that we are doing the optimum content that students need in order to have that civil right of I am a reader. You know, I can tell you, most of you are elementary teachers, not all of them. We have some secondary teachers, but much of my work is in middle school and high school. And I can tell you that if students are not proficient readers, when they're in elementary or middle school or high school classes, it is not a joyful experience for them. That it takes so much effort to read the science material, read the social studies material, read this language arts material if you are not a fluent, accurate reader. And let me tell you, it's so much easier to take care of this in kindergarten, first and second grade than it is to take care of it when they are 12, 14, or 16. We have, once again, have got to make this something that we really pursue, that we measure, that we alter plans for children, that we have intensity in the early grades so children do not have to suffer. Because some children don't want to come to school because of it. Some children drop out of school because of it. It's just too much of a hardship there and beyond that. And we know what to do. It may take great effort in elementary school, but we know what to do, starting with the content. Now, as I went through all of the handouts, I saw two types of graphics repeated again and again. And I did today as I was listening to Emily. Wasn't that a great keynote? So we have the model, Scarsborough model, that is the one that drives the work of PaTTAN. So every presentation from PaTTAN itself included this. And the big idea was that there are two major areas of skill that you need in order to put together and wrap into a totality of accurate, proficient reading with comprehension. And then I saw in some other presentations, and utilized this morning by Emily, the simple view of reading. And these are basically just two different models that have basically the same ideas. This is the one that you will find in the IES practice guide, the IES practice guide, which came out of a federal funded review of research and is available online to you, and it's in the references at the end. So I'm going to bet, and I want you to have a pencil and a piece of paper. As we go through this, if there was a concept that I touch upon that was infused in one of the lessons, I want you to make a tally mark, because I want you to see how this conference was so organized around the science of reading and our best research available. And so you're going to tally every time you say, yes, I went to one session that talked about decoding. I went to a session that said in print concepts that the students should know the names of the letters as one thing that predicts how well they are going to acquire reading skills. Tick. Okay, you got your task. So you are sort of just making out, so how valuable was this conference based on what did you learn about the content and what did you learn about the instruction? All right, it's not a competition. It is just to focus you. Teacher talk. I have done quite a bit of training during this period of time, starting in March, on how to do remote lessons and how to do remote lessons that are live and remote lessons that are ones that are recorded. And so I did a total of 4 trainings that are recorded. And I asked the group that did those recordings if I could allow PaTTAN to also put that link up on their materials so you could go to those. So Pamela, yes, I got permission from Safe and Civil Schools, and they will send us that link. Okay, but what we found is the more times we had students do anything, touching the screen, keeping a note of how many they get right with tally marks, anything we did that gave them more attention and opportunities to respond, they did better with remote lessons, both live and lessons that are recorded. Okay, so that's why I'm infusing a little bit of that. So all of you know the simple view of reading. I mean, I have to tell you, you are some of the best educated teachers that I've ever had the gift of working with. And part of it is that many of you have taken advantage of doing the letters training in your state of Pennsylvania. So the simple view of reading that came out 1986 by Goff in an article basically said this, which you know well, that to be a competent reader, that you need, on one hand, decoding, put your finger on the screen, and second, you need language comprehension in order to emerge with comprehension. So notice the multiplication, it's not a plus sign, because we have found that one of these does not necessarily compensate for the other. Maybe I have good decoding skills, but low language comprehension. And if we gave a number like 1 and 0, just as Emily did this morning, 1 times 0 equals 0. But maybe, as many children with dyslexia have, high language skills, but low decoding skills, we still have 1 times 0. And 1 times 0 is still 0 or very low comprehension. So basically, we should end the reading wars right here. The reading wars that say we should only teach decoding, no. The reading wars that say we should only teach language comprehension, no. The students need both of these, well taught with the right content. Well taught with the right content. So let's just do a quick review, okay? Remember your telling. So the decoding skills in the simple view of reading is that you have print concepts. And so that you are able to name the letters as a part of that, which is a predictor of your ease of gaining reading. And phonological awareness, the understanding that spoken words in English or any language could be broken down. We could take sentences and break them into words. We could take words, break them into syllables. We can take words and break them into phonemes, the speech sounds that are represented by the letters. But these auditory skills are very critical to our acquisition of reading. And then we have phonics and word recognition. I bet you went to more than one session on phonics and word recognition. That I have letter-sound associations. I can blend sounds together. I just read a new study by Lene Airy that's not been out yet, but it will be, and where they compared separate word where you say each sound, you go it, and then blend it, sit, or continuous, it, and the students did significantly better in terms of sounding out the word if they had been taught using a continuous pattern rather than separate. All right. But then we also know that children need to learn about the prefixes and suffixes in words. 80% of all multisyllabic words have a prefix or a suffix. So they need the patterns within words. And then they need to have automatic recognition of the words. Now, I'm going to take a moment on that because two of you emailed me and said, we had the term orthographic mapping and we're not clear about it. So I'm going to take a minute because I think this is a topic that directly relates to sight vocabulary, the instant recognition of words that we need a little more knowledge on. So, let's see where we're going. We'll come to it in a minute, and fluency. Fluency basically is a product of having many words automatic sight vocabulary. Okay, so I went through all of your handouts. And what I did is I wrote down every time a word was used more than 3 times, just to give me an idea of what was the coverage. So get your tally mark ready again, because these were hit on at least 3 times in this conference. Phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, being able to blend, segment, being able to add sounds to words, being able to substitute sounds, letter sound associations, and being able to decode words, sounding them out, being able to encode words in spelling. Remember how Louisa Moats made such a big point of the reciprocal nature of spelling to help decoding, and decoding helps spelling, but how useful it was as an assessment measure also. And the importance of syllables that would tell us, give us information about the sounds of the vowels in closed syllables, open syllables, final E syllables, R-controlled vowels, vowel teams. And that there should be advanced word study. Those are the words that were used together to suggest that the students also needed to know the pronunciation and meaning of prefix, suffixes, and roots. And a number of people talked about irregular, high-frequency words and sight vocabulary ending with fluency. I bet if you went to many sessions, you just had a lot tallies. And so, but the one that seems to be needed just a little clarification is the term orthographic mapping and sight vocabulary. I look back over time in reading, and when people talked about sight vocabulary, or they had lists of words that were labeled sight vocabulary, which we had a lot of those still in our schools, that really what they were talking about, the list was really high-frequency words. Sight vocabulary is any word that you instantly recognize. Now, a sight word could be high frequency, a word that you recognize instantly. It could be low frequency, a word that you only occasionally see, but you recognize it immediately. It could be a regular word that you could sound out. It could be an irregular word. Any word could be a sight vocabulary. And your lexicon of sight vocabulary could be different than mine, different than Pamela's. And so we can all have different sight vocabulary. But the term that many of you are less familiar with was orthographic mapping. So I just reached into a presentation I made and just wanted to share a little bit about this, because this was a question that was sent to me. How do students remember words they no longer need to sound out? False assumption. This is what we used to think. Students use visual memory to remember words as they would in remembering the label for a book. It's a book, that's a table. So we used to think it was visual memory. And so what did that lead us to do? It led us to have lots of flashcards with high frequency words, particularly high frequency irregular words that we want to be sight words, and we would flash them, flash them, flash them, flash them. But research basically shows that in terms of brain activity, as David Kilpatrick reports in his book, that it is not the same for naming objects and reading words, that we process words differently than labeling these as glasses. The word glasses, I would do differently. I would process differently. So looking at what Kilpatrick said in response to this question, how do students remember words they no longer need to sound out? Well, we do input the words visually, but we do not store them visually. We store them orthographically, which is the spelling, phonologically, the pronunciation, and semantically, the meaning. So originally the term orthographic mapping was not used. The original person who researched this is Lene Airy. So this year she got a big award in New York, and I was blessed to be there and to speak just to celebrate her long, long history of excellent research in reading. So I downloaded 196 studies that she had read, performed, some alone, some with colleagues, some with doc students, and read them. And I will tell you a little secret. She just sent me 2 days ago. She was accepted for Reading Research Quarterly. Some of you get Reading Research Quarterly. And in the future, I'm not sure exactly when it's coming out, but they're going to do a whole volume on the science of reading. And they accepted her review of all of her research history. And you've got to get that one, Reading Research Quarterly, which would have Lene Airy's article in it. Okay, don't tell her I told you that. Okay, it's a secret, okay? So she originally called it connection forming process. And I actually like that and use it in my own work instead of orthographic mapping, because it is connection forming process. So put your finger under the word how and read it with me. How do children learn to read words by sight? The process at the heart of sight word learning is a connection forming process. Connections are formed that link the spelling of the written word to their pronunciations and meanings in memory. So the student, it's not a visual act, it is making connections between the spelling of the word, the pronunciations, and the meaning in memory. And in some other articles, she told us why it's so important for sight word in memory to have phonemic awareness and letter sound associations. So again, put your finger under readings. Readers, phonemic awareness. Oh, we got to start over. Teacher made a mistake. Readers, phonemic awareness and knowledge of letter sound regularities enable them to form connections between the spelling and pronunciation of words in order to store the bonded word units in memory. So that is what leads to sight vocabulary. So we used to teach phonemic awareness thinking it would help you sound out words. And we taught you letter sounds to help you sound out words. But it goes way beyond that, because the ability to have sight words is based on phonemic awareness and letter sound associations. Wow, now wasn't that exciting? It was to me. And so just a few little notes there. From second grade on, skilled readers only need 1 to 4 exposures for a word to become a sight word. So our brains get very talented at making these connections between the spelling and the letter sounds and the pronunciation and the semantic meaning. But the second note, the speed with which children in first and second grade turn an unfamiliar word into a sight word is a key predictor of those who will struggle later. So I'm reading with a small group and we've had this word 4 or 5 times and the student still has to stop and sound it out. I'm concerned about that child, because that child is not making those connections that will lead to automaticity. Well, oh my goodness, how our time flies. I'm having too much fun here. And so language comprehension also has certain elements that are required in terms of content. Well, you're going to have to hang in there for just a minute with me because I want to get to the next big point. Yes, the critical content for both decoding and language comprehension is essential. Language comprehension, these were the words taken from your own handouts: vocabulary, background knowledge, inference, sentence comprehension, text structure, narrative, informative, making connections, utilizing some of the key words. But we also need the instruction. Now, we already hit that in my example with Eckery because we do know what kind of instruction we need. But I want to emphasize that good instruction is good instruction. People say to me, Anita, I can't do remote lessons. I don't know how to do remote lessons. Well, yes, you do. You know good instruction, and good instruction is good instruction. And you know that what you think about as a learner is what you learn. So you must keep them totally on task of what you want them to learn. And then I just listed here what we know about effective instruction, that it is unambiguous. You're going to get it. It's explicit. And it is very logical and well organized. It is systematic. And there is a constant formative assessment in all of the instruction where you're asking, is that correct? Is it incorrect? How do I respond? So there is embedded in it a diagnostic element. And this is exactly what PaTTAN defines it as: explicit, systematic, and diagnostic. So I talked earlier about Eckery, which uses explicit instruction, which is unambiguous and direct. And just one more time, it has routines and goals, and it's interactive, and it has review. And we demonstrate or model, I do it. Guided practice, we do it. Check understanding, you do it. Enough practice to lead to learning, and it's spaced over time. You can look at your teaching and your curriculum materials to see if your instruction matches that. But we also have many responses from the students, and we look and listen to their responses. We give them feedback, and we have a brisk pace. So I'm going to skip over here, but an end note. So my purpose here today was to say, from my perspective, this beautiful symposium heightened our moral imperative. Remind us of the content that we needed to teach in terms of decoding and in terms of language comprehension so that we would have comprehension. And also reminded us of the quality and the intensity of the instruction that we need. And that was its goal. And you ask, well, how does that fit with our title? If we utilize the very best content with the instruction that will lead to learning, the students will experience success. And that success does breed more success. We used to think that we had to have cute activities to get the kid motivated, that we had to have like a hook that would grab them. But my review of cognitive science comes to a different conclusion. Motivation may not predict achievement, but achievement does predict motivation. So that is what we are about, teaching the right content with the right instruction so that students are motivated. I'll tell you, during this pandemic, I am taking beginning challenge lessons virtual with a live teacher. And I can tell you, every week, this is reinforced Because if I am able to play something that sounds okay, or someone could recognize the song, I want to put more energy, more effort, more work into my practice. And so I see that my achievement is what's leading to my motivation. So that is our big idea: success breeds success. What next? Well, we know this, and now we must do it. One of my favorite sayings of a great educator was, "It is well to think well." And after this conference, we think well, but it is divine to act well. Our children deserve for us to act well with our moral imperative, the right content, and the most effective teaching. At the end of this, I just gave you my favorite books. I mean, if we're going to be shelter in place, which Oregon went back to shelter in place today, in most cases, then we need a lot of books. So there's the letters books. Oh, do sign up for this training. And Kilpatrick's book on reading. This one is for you that are literacy nerds, this is a must read. Excellent chapters by Lene Airy, by Louisa Moats, by David Kilpatrick. And another one of David Kilpatrick's book that also has an excellent embedded curriculum for advanced phonemic awareness. A phonemic awareness program that we've had very great success adding to what we've done in the core program. And Daniel Willingham's book on reading, Seidenberg's book on reading, Core's book on reading, which has great resources for assessment, as well as all of the 5 areas of reading explained. An excellent book on phonics, enhanced core reading instruction I used as an example. My favorite book on more explicit instruction in writing, and one that maybe you've already read, The Knowledge Gap. To remind us for comprehension, we need lots of knowledge and background knowledge. A book by Isabel Beck and Margaret McCowan on vocabulary, and Susan Newman's book on vocabulary. But also on instruction. Oh, there's a book I recognize. But also John Hattie's books on instruction, and his recent book on feedback and instruction. Donna Rosenshine, deceased, but this was a book written about his principles in action. A great book on retrieval practice, cognitive science book that recently came out, a real page-turner, embedded formative assessment by Dylan William, and his other most recent book, a book on practice, another book by Daniel Willingham, Mindset, a really fascinating book by Graham Nuthall from New Zealand, books on attendance. Don't forget to get your practice guides, and a site that maybe you've never ever gone to that has excellent white papers on major issues in education. Well, I bet that we are slightly over time. Not bad, 3 minutes. So as we are leaving, Pam, do you have anything you want to say as we wrap this up?
Well, first of all, Anita, I want to say thank you. You always teach us so much, but you inspire us. Your humanity is what shines through all the time, through everything that you do, but also all that you teach us and remind us of. You had me in tears, as you did 2 years ago, and I bet I'm not the only one. We are truly grateful that, again, you closed out the symposium in such an amazing way. And thank you so very much to you and to every educator, parent, person who attended the symposium. I love the quote, "Now let's do well. Let's do something with what we've learned." It is a moral imperative. Our kids deserve literacy. All children do. Thank you, Anita. You have inspired us once again, and you set us off on a path. Bless you.
And thank you. It was a true honor to be here. And may you, as educators, in whatever year we have, may you thrive. And may your students thrive as learners, because we want literacy for all. May your schools be peaceful, productive havens for all children. And be kind. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to your colleagues. Be kind to the children that we have the great gift to teach. May you be given a lot of kindness today. May you have a wonderful new school year. And may we start teaching right away and do intervention very quickly, because we cannot wait. These students need to become literate. Bless you all.